Hey, it's Rob. Welcome to this episode of the podcast. Today, we are doing a deep dive into your brain. And my whole intention, hopefully, the outcome for this episode for you, is to understand how your brain works, specifically how a special part of your brain works, that you can start to understand, build a relationship with, to stop you doing things like talking yourself into a DNF or talking yourself you should stop a race, having massive pre-race anxiety that's really debilitating for you, judging yourself, criticizing yourself, comparing yourself to others, and catastrophizing things that are happening to you maybe during a race or during training, and to stop these stories that lead to downward spirals. We're going to be looking at a model of neurology developed by Professor Stephen Peters. Now, this is an oversimplified model of the brain, so any neuroscientists out there, please go easy on me. Dr. Peters worked for many, many years as a lecturer and a researcher to come up with this model. And then took it into sports psychology. And he worked with so many football teams, British Olympic teams, cyclists. So Chris Hoy is a standout that he worked with. And he put this model into practice with all of these amazing teams and got the results. And then he wrote a book called The Chimp Paradox. And then subsequent book, a new release book, an excellent one called A Path Through the Jungle. So I'm going to be referring to both of those resources during this podcast. Now, the whole purpose is so you understand how your brain works. You've got a bit of a metaphor or a model of that brain so that when you are training, running, or preparing for a race, or even not running context, just in life, you can identify which part of your brain is at the steering wheel. And then you can decide if you want that part of your brain to be driving. And then I'm going to give you some tools and techniques that you can calm that part of your brain and get back into who you are as a person and going after the things that you want, the goals that you want, and the person that you want to be. So let's dive in. We're going to go through a little bit of the theory of Dr. Stephen Peters' work. Now, I realize that it seems like every single podcast out there now is talking about the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system and fight or flight and saber-toothed tigers and all this kind of stuff. So I'm going to avoid doing that because you're probably just as, conditioned to it as I am. So today we're going to look at the different model, but we do have to understand this. Our brain wasn't built in one go. It was built over many, many, many thousands of years, millions of years, depending on which theory you subscribe to. But it all started with our brain was meant to keep us to survive, right? And that's where we're going to start with. And if you just go back, and if you can imagine in your mind, not go back, but if you imagine in your mind the early, our earliest ancestors living maybe on the savannah in, Africa or Asia or somewhere, or in Australia, the oldest indigenous people in the world. So we're living on the savannah, and we had to come together in groups to survive. To be on your own was dangerous. You had to, you were susceptible to attack from predators. You were susceptible to exposure. Whereas together you could split tasks, you could share food, you could hunt together. You get the picture, right? I'm not going to go too much into it, but that's when our brains, there were so many developing years, thousands and thousands of developing years, that the limbic system of our brain was there to help us survive. So what does that mean? It means we had to care about what other people thought of us, because if we got kicked out of those tribes, we were predator fodder, basically. And so when you have that part of your brain that's worried about what other people think of you, or worried about your reputation, or worried about what, letting people down, that is that part of your brain, the survival part of your brain. Now, Dr. Stephen Peters calls this the chimp, right? So we're going to refer it in this podcast as the chimp. The chimp is the limbic system. It's the oldest part of our brain. You've probably heard of the term amygdala, those little arm-shaped parts of our brain, the fear center of our brain, right? That's part of the limbic system. And what we need to understand is it's the oldest part of our brain. It's the most It's the most fastest, great language today, Rob. It's 5 times faster than the next part of the brain we're going to learn about, the human brain or the prefrontal cortex. And the reason it's 5 times faster is because it needs to scan for looking for things like danger, fear, doubt, uncertainty, boredom, insecurity, these types of things. Basically looking to say, am I safe? It says that around 4 times a second, scanning for danger. If you've ever run along a trail and you're running along and you might see a snake on the side of the trail, maybe this hasn't happened to you, but if you have, I guarantee you that for the next probably 5 or 10 minutes, as you continue past that snake, every single stick you see on that trail, your mind is really focused on thinking that it's also a snake. And this might happen, for a few runs after you see a snake. And this is because your brain has sensed danger and is now scanning for it on a heightened state, if you like. But your brain is already doing this. Now, is this a bad part of our brain? Absolutely not. This is the part of our brain that when you step off the curb and a cyclist is flying past, it sees it and jumps you back quicker than you can even think about. It's that reflex that's there to keep you safe. You don't have to think, oh, there's a cyclist coming towards me. I'm going to get hit and probably hurt by this cyclist. I better take a step back. No, it's all done automatically. That's because it's evolved over so many years in our brain. And it's also an annoying part of us because it's the part of us that's fearful to step up and give that talk at work or go for that race that we really want to do or travel or go and talk to that person that we want to meet. The fear comes up. What if? Not safe, might get rejected, might not make it, might fail. And all of these things come up. That's coming from our chimp. Right. That's the first part of our brain that we need to know about, the chimp. Oh, and today I want you to really get to know your chimp and understand how your chimp talks to you, as in what's its flavor of language and how does it present itself. Either running is a good way to look at it. So maybe we'll look at running, but you can also think about it in career or in relationships or in life, okay? So let's go to the next part of our brain. So we've gone to the chimp, that's the limbic system. The next part we need to learn about, and there's 3 by the way. So the second part is called the human. This is what Dr. Stephen Peters calls the human. Now, medically it's called the prefrontal cortex, and it's the newest part of our brain, if you like, if you call a couple 100,000 years new. But it's evolved over the top of our limbic system. It's where you see all the squiggles when you see a brain. It's because it's jamming into our brain as much as it can. Now, I'll keep it simple. Dr. Peters says this prefrontal cortex is the human. It's where our thinking, it's where our planning resides. It's where our values, our identity, all of these things are in our prefrontal cortex. It's the calm, rational, decision-making part of our brain. And it's why we are so evolved as humans, because we have this magical, masterful prefrontal cortex. So we've got the chimp, who's only interested in survival. When the chimp gets thrown danger or uncertainty or these things we talked about before, it goes into, yes, here it comes, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, right? So, and these are your responses. Do you get angry, stand up and yell and fight? Does your chimp do that to you? Or does it flight? Does it run away? And, oh, I don't want to talk to that person, or I don't want to go on this race, or I don't want to, does it run away, right? Flee. Does it freeze, as in literally freeze? Now, freeze has got a few different reasons. One of it could be you're frozen in terror and you don't say anything, you don't make a decision, you just kind of stand there. The other thing freeze does is actually helps you, and this is what Brett Connellan helped us realize when I interviewed him. If you've ever listened to that, those 2 amazing interviews with Brett Connellan, that freeze is a way that you stop and gather information about what you're going to do next. So there is a positive side of that freeze as well. So if you're a freezer, maybe you've got some wisdom in there as well. And then fawn is an example of fawning, is where you pander to somebody. Say you're being at work, someone intimidates you, then you actually fawn, like you kind of go up to them and start to make friends with them so that they'll leave you alone and bully someone else, basically. All right, so that's what your chimp will do when it is heightened and scared. And that's what happens, here we go, when you're going for a big race. Say you've signed up to your first marathon or your first 10K or whatever it is, that big goal that's scaring you. Boom, your chimp is online, grabs the steering wheel, says, what are you doing? Don't you know this is dangerous? Don't you know you might fail? Don't you know you're going to get judged by the people at work? Don't you know you might not be as fast as the rest of the people in your running club? Don't you know you might not finish the race? You might get injured. You might get run over by a car. You don't even know this place. You might have to travel, go on an aeroplane. It might crash on your way. What are you thinking? Let's not do any of this. All we need to do is just stay safe, stay warm, and stay comfortable. That's our job. So I'm going to scare you so you don't make a decision to do this race. Right. Now, that's the chimp. The human's the part of you that goes, I want to do this race. You know what? I really feel like I'm ready to take my running to the next level. I've been running quite consistently and I'd like to stretch myself and see if I could do that distance, or see if I could go a bit faster, or see if I could do a race in another state or city, or even another country. There are running groups going there, so I'd like to go with them, and be with them, and we can all experience it together. And if I do this race, that means I'm really going to have to be disciplined in my training, and I'm going to have to organize my time, and all of these wonderful things that come along when you make a commitment. That's the way the human is approaching it. I'll get to, train and learn how to eat and train with my track group on a Tuesday, talk to my coach, and it's going to be a stretch, but I'm ready for it. That's when you're humans driving the bus metaphor. You are the bus, by the way. Okay, so the third part of the brain that we need to understand Dr. Stephen Peters' model is the computer. Now, let's keep this really clear. The chimp and the human are the ones that are the thinking parts of our brain. The computer is our automatic system that we program, right? So it's programmed with things like our beliefs, our thinking patterns, our habits are all programmed into our computer. The old analogy is the first time you learn to drive a car, you are overwhelmed with having to turn the key and then push your foot on the brake, and then if you're driving a manual, you have to put it into gear and take the handbrake off and put the indicator on. But it's raining, put the windscreen wipers on. Which direction I look first, left or right or left? Have to look over my shoulder, have to check my blind spot, have to indicate, pull out. Then I've got to turn the indicator off. By the way, I'm going to listen to the radio. Where's that switch? Which one do I have to push? Oh, the lights are now on because it's dark. I forgot to change into second gear. So all of these thoughts are still conscious because you haven't programmed your computer with how I drive a car. If you go to this movie, The Matrix, you know that Neo was able to program himself with how to fly a helicopter and how to fly, how to do jujitsu. Oh, sorry, no, jujitsu. I forget which martial art it was. My apologies. But he was able to have that computer program downloaded in an instant, whereas it takes us many, many years to learn how to play guitar, piano, do a martial art. But once you've got it in the computer, you no longer have to think about it. Right. And this is where our identity is. I'm this type of person. I'm a, job, your title, all of the things are programmed into that. And your values, what's most important to you in life? Is it, probably your career, your family, your work, your health, travel, all these values are programmed into that computer. So you don't have to consciously think about them. Right. So we've now got the three parts of the brain. The chimp, the limbic system that takes you offline by getting all emotional, and it thinks in short term. What should we do now to stay alive? I don't care about the future. I don't even think about that. Let's not do that because it's dangerous. We might get judged. Right? The human's the part of you that wants to grow and evolve and think and plan and be this, have a full life. And we've both of these parts of your brain have got access to the computer. Now, they, as in both parts of your brain, can program that computer to act on autopilot, because here's the thing, the computer is faster than both of these parts of our brain. So the chimp, unfortunately, has had longer access to your computer and has done far more processing and is faster than the human to draw up a belief, habit, or program thing from your computer. For example, you go into a party, and let's just say you want to meet somebody at the party, someone that you'd like to meet, or someone who you've taken a fancy to is going to be at this party, and you're nervous about going to the party, right? And as you're getting ready, you're nervous. What am I going to say? What if they're there? What if they don't like me? The chimp is at the wheel, pulling the programs out of the computer. Oh, last time you said you asked a girl out, she said no, and then she laughed at you, and then you're delving into my adolescent years here. Or last time you approached somebody, they didn't turn up to the party, or or you spilt your drink, or you said something silly. So this is the chimp saying, danger, you're going to get rejected. There's a chance you're going to get rejected, so let's not go to the party, right? And the chimp's at the computer pulling out these programs. Your heart's beating fast, you're imagining all these things, you've got a little bit of anxiety. You get the picture, right? But the human part of you is like, I really want to meet this person. But the chimp's just like overriding. It's called an amygdala hijack, right? So the amygdala, the chimp has hijacked your brain and said, there's no way we're doing this because of all these things that could go wrong. You get the picture. Now, the thing with the computer is who's ever driving, the chimp or the human, it's kind of like a social media feed. It's just spitting back out what's happened in the past. It's like an algorithm. So the chimp's just feeding in fear and getting fear back, feeding in failure and getting failure back, and just showing it to you and communicating to you, this is dangerous, this could not work, you could fail, you could be rejected. One of the best, probably, mentors, even though it's no direct mentor of mine, Dr. Michael Gervais, has written a book all about the first rule of mastery, is about not worrying about what people think of you. And that's because it's coming from the chimp brain. And so much of what he saw in his sports psychology practice over the years was people being afraid to fail, to let the team down, or being judged by the team. And when you say team, if you're running, it could be crew or family or running club or something. So that's all being driven from the chimp. Now, when the human is driving the computer, that's what we want. We want the human to program the computer. What does that look like? Well, it looks like I'm preparing for my next race. Let's say you're going to do an ultra marathon and you need to have your checkpoints all sorted out, your drop bags, your pacing chart. You might have somebody coming along to crew you. You might know you need to get from this point to this point in X amount of time. And you're programming in things that are going to help you, such as, I've been running for many years, I'm ready for this ultra marathon. I know that when this is going to get tough, and I'm prepared for that. I'm going to have this mantra, which is I can do hard things, and which means I can do this race. I'm going to tell my computer, I'm here to enjoy this. I'm not even caring about other people's results or podiuming or any of that stuff. For me, it's going to be a day of adventure. And I'm programming all this stuff into my computer from the human brain to help me. Remember, I've got to drink, every 30 minutes, got to have a big drink. Keep on eating or I'm not going to finish the race. And you're programming in your plans for things that you don't need to worry about. The ideal when you're running is that everything's conditioned into you so you don't have to think about it. An example of this would be when Dr. Peters himself was working with Sir Chris Hoy, the most decorated Olympic cyclist of all time. He was working with him for the Keirin race, which is I think it's 8 laps. Please don't quote me on that if I'm wrong. But it's a Keirin, it's an individual, one person from each team cycling around a track. I'm not a cyclist, my apologies. Anyway, so Chris Hoy was training for the Olympics and he's working with Dr. Stephen Peters, and he's like, I need to be on autopilot for this race. And that was a really key language. So what Stephen Peters helped him with was taking the chimp and the human offline and just going on autopilot. So that meant at the start, I need to settle into this many RPM at this wattage at this pace, right? So that he knew exactly what he was doing. He was like a robot in that race. So much so that he said after the race, I forgot where I was in the race because it wasn't that important because he'd had it all pre-programmed. So his chimp wasn't on the starting line saying, you're not good enough for this. Who do you think you are being an Olympic final? Someone else is faster. They got bigger quads than you and their bike looks faster than you. The chimp wasn't even there because he was like, I know my job. My job is to start at this pace and whatever his job was, right? So he was focused on that. The human wasn't talking to him either. It was all on autopilot. So that's how the computer can be helpful normally in faster sports, not so much in running where you've got time to think. And I hope you're still with me. All right, so we've learned about the 3 parts of the brain. Now, what did I say? I say this is about you. So I want you to think about, how does your chimp show up? And what I mean by show up is, how does your brain, your limbic system, try to take you away from the things that you want in life. And maybe you know that already, but I'm going to give you a few examples of things it might say to you, so that you can recognize when your chimp is driving. Now, how do you recognize? So the first thing is you need to have awareness. You need to be able to spot it. Oh, that's my chimp, right? So, and I know it sounds funny, but this is the language that you get used to say. You've got to be able to spot that your chimp is in charge. For example, is your heart racing? Have you got that, like anxious feeling? Are you tight in the chest? Are you breathing shallow? Maybe even sweating a little bit. Are you like uptight and in an anxious state? Do you catastrophize? Like there's one little thing happen and then you're like, that's it. My whole race is over, or my whole job's gone, or my whole life is over. And then are you kind of reacting emotionally, instead of like responding rationally, I guess you could say. And that's when the chimp's in charge. So the real question is that Dr. Peters says is, do I want these thoughts, or do I want these feelings? And if the answer is no, then that means your chimp is in charge. Right. So here's a few ways your chimp could be showing up. Overthinking. Right? So you're going into a race. Oh, have I done enough? Have I planned enough? Oh, I don't think I've done enough Ks. I don't think I've done. Overthinking is it's one of my chimp things, to be honest. Negotiator. Oh, if you just do this, then you can do this. Or you've worked so hard in this session. It's okay to miss that last rep, because you've really done 6 good ones. So you don't really need to do the 7th thing. You deserve a bit of a rest, right? And then there's the drama queen, which embellishes every little thing. Like you might just kind of roll your ankle a little bit, but it just becomes this huge thing. And I've rolled my ankle and I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish the race. And you get the picture. The critic's the chimp that just completely takes you out by like being that person. Who do you think you are? You're not good enough. You're not ready. You haven't done enough. You're going to blow up. You failed before, you're going to fail again. All that horrible stuff that we do to ourselves. Is your chimp the comparison chimp? Whereas, oh, look at that person over there. Oh, they look so much fitter than you. They're so much younger than you. They're so much more buff. They've got a better swimsuit. They've got a better bike. They've got better shoes. Whatever. They look so much more prepared than you. Oh, look at that other person over there. I think you better self-seed and come to the back of the start group, because you don't even look like you belong up there. And the storyteller chimp. The storyteller chimp is the one that something little happens, and then so let's give an example. You get a little bit of a twinge in, I don't know, your knee as you're running your race you've been preparing for 12 months. And then it starts to think, oh, well, that's a little twinge. So in a couple of Ks, it's going to be really, really bad. And then you're probably going to have to start limping. And then, you know what, I think this could actually end up, being cancer of your knee, or it could even, you might have to never run again, because this could develop, or it's certainly going to take you out of this race. I might have exaggerated that a bit too fast, that story, but I, to be more like real, it takes one little thing and then builds this story that ends up taking you out, either physically or mentally. All right. So I hope you've at least found one way that your chimp tries to take you away from growth or new things, or going forward for your dreams, and pulls you back, undermines you, and puts you back on the couch watching Netflix. And maybe that's the imposter syndrome. This imposter syndrome all comes from your chimp. Who do you think you are? You're not ready. You're going to get found out. It's always been luck that you've succeeded, and it's only a matter of time until someone goes, whoa, who's she? Why is she? She's not ready for that. Well, the same person's thinking the same about themselves. So that's where imposter syndrome comes from. So spot it, right? Name it to tame it. Back to Emma Murray's mindfulness technique. When you can say, chimp's in charge, you've automatically changed your perception, and now you're in that meta emotional state of being, now I know who's driving my brain. And then you're the observer. Oh, there's the chimp. Now I understand why I feel like I do. Okay, do I want this feeling? No, I don't want this feeling. Great. Let's start to put in some strategies. So what do we do? How do we get to know our chimp, and how do we stop the chimp from hijacking our race and our life? So I guess the overarching principle here is, you're not going to get rid of your chimp, and we shouldn't be trying. So don't think, oh, I wish I didn't have a chimp, or my chimp's, too strong and not as, your chimp's smaller than my chimp, mine's a gorilla or something. We need to build a relationship with it and get to understand how to soothe it, to make it feel heard, and how to like calm it down. And so the first thing, and this comes from the book The Brave Athlete, Leslie Patterson, Dr. Simon Peters, I believe. Oh gosh, I always get Simon's name wrong. My apologies, Simon. Um, but they call it chimp purging. Dr. Peters calls it the chimp dump. But the chimp purging is when you let your chimp have a voice. Now, I've actually done this in a race before. I learned all this stuff, and it really helped me. I remember saying to my crew, can I just talk all the things that are going wrong at the moment? And it only took me a couple of minutes. I'm like, my ankle sore, I'm dehydrated, I feel like my pace is low, and I just dumped it all out. I'm not feeling great, I'm so tired, caffeine's not working, and I'm behind where I want to be, I've just been overtaken, and I just got to say it all out loud. And then I went, okay, let's get on with it. What do we need to do? Right? But if you hold and you're suppressing all that stuff, then your chimp is not being heard. It's kind of like a 2-year-old, 3-year-old having a tantrum, right? It's just going to keep on going until it gets not what it wants, but till it gets seen and heard. All right. So you say to your chimp, look, I know you're scared. I know that all of these things could go wrong, but I've got a plan. Right. And instantly the chimp's like, you've actually got a plan. So all these catastrophe things that I'm seeing, you've actually got a way out of it. Okay, I'm listening. So you can also have somebody like Brené Brown talks about having a shame buddy, where something happens and you do something like then you feel shame. You call them and you say, "Oh my gosh, I just need to share this with you." You can have a chimp buddy or a chimp listener, and that is someone, a coach, partner, friend, someone you just call up and you just say, "Can I just vent? I just need to vent because my chimp is dominating my thoughts and my life at the moment." Um, and then one of Dr. Peter's favorite techniques for this is sarcasm or laughing at your chimp. And so he says something like, classic chimp move. You got me. Um, you got me again. You're trying to tell me this, this, and this. And using that humor to kind of to spot the chimp and derail it. So then we want to reassure and soothe the chimp. So the chimp's not logical. It's like trying to, again, when you've got a young kid and they're scared of, let's say they're going down the slippery slide at the playground, for example, or if you've ever been that, and they're like, I'm scared, I'm scared. And you're like, well, statistically speaking, only 3 kids a year across the whole world die from going down slippery slides. And it's never going to actually happen to you because this has got rails on it. And it's, you may as well, be talking a different language, right? Because the child is in their emotional brain and they're not listening to logic. That's the chimp. But the chimp loves reassurance. And so think about that child. It's like, I know you're nervous, right? It's okay, right? But you've done this before, right? Do you remember that time? Yeah. Or you can calm it in pre-race rituals like having your favorite playlist, doing breathing exercises, right? So 4 in, 6, sorry, count, breathing in for 4, breathing out for 6, making that exhale longer. Visualizing yourself succeeding or it going well, because the chimp loves to show you negative visualization of your goals not being attained and you failing on the way. And then grounding yourself in mindfulness, your breath, connecting to 3 things you can hear, 3 things you can feel, 3 things you can see, and then feeling your feet on the ground, right? And you're telling your brain, if I've got time to take these deep breaths, if I've got time to feel the wind on my skin, listen to the birds, we're safe. There's no threat right here and right now. And then we move back into the human brain. Now, in the latest book, A Path Through the Jungle, Dr. Peters teaches the quickest way back to your human brain is to ask one simple question. And that question is, what's the plan? And the reason that we do this is it cuts through all of the chaos and the stories and the drama queen and the comparison, and it brings you back to where you are, what you need to do, what your job is. For example, it might be your pace. I just need to stick to a 5-minute 30 pace, to the next checkpoint. All I need to do is, it's 30 minutes, I need to have a drink, grab a gel, keep moving forward, right? This is my pace. This is my job. And coming back to that plan gets you back into the human brain. The human is now in control of the computer, and it's saying pacing strategy, nutrition strategy, happiness strategy, for example, instead of the chimp being in control of the computer saying, look at all these things that could go wrong. You're not prepared. You don't even know what you're doing, and we're going to die. So how do we program the computer? And this is a little bit of advanced stuff if you want this, but you program, remember your computer's got your habits, your beliefs, your identity. And so if you're always thinking that I'm someone that goes out too hard and blows up, for example, we've got that belief that's part of, it's part of your identity as a runner. And you can change that. Or I used to have the one I've told you before, I'm a slow runner or I'm not fast, right? So instead of that, you can consciously program your computer. So that looks like something like you finish your run, you stop your watch, and you just go, I did really well today. That was a good session. Or, wasn't such a great session, but it's another brick in the wall. Check. There's another thing I've done. I might say, what went well today? Even though it wasn't the best session, I had that great, 1 kilometer section in the middle where I just found my groove. And I just want to do more of that. And then you can rehearse calmness, because the more you can program calmness into the computer, the more that's going to help your chimp. And that could be mantras such as, I'm slow and steady, or I'm consistent and purposeful as I run. So they weren't the best ideas, but so visualizing yourself staying composed during hard times is a great way to do it. So, and that's our adaptation or our resilience as a runner. So you can imagine yourself, or a time where you stuck it out and you were calm, even though things were going bad around you. The weather might have turned bad, but you just kept on your plan. You put your jacket on, you kept on eating, you kept looking after yourself. Other runners were like freaking out, pulling out and getting scared and all that. And you were just like calm, right? And these are the things that you can put into computer. Say, remember that time when we did that really hard race? Let's relive that. And that's in there. So that when you get to that point where you're like, I don't know if I can do this, your computer's got all of these references that you can pull out from your human brain saying, yep, I did that hard race. I did that hard session. That was a hard one. I forgot about that one. And then I did this hard race. And then I did this hard thing at work. And then I, performed really well here. And all of a sudden you've got this reference point programmed by your human brain that you can draw on. All right, let's get this. There's a lot of how in this episode. That's what I wanted. I wanted lots of practical tools for you, which I'm always about. So we want to strengthen the relationship between the human and the chimp. We don't want them to avoid each other and become polarized. We want them to talk to each other, so that when the chimp's going crazy, the human can give the chimp a banana and calm it down and reassure it and say, we've got this. Thank you so much for caring and for showing me all these things. We've got this. So here's a bit of a chimp management plan, if you like. So this is a couple of examples. Let's just say you've got start line nerves, right? And your chimp's looking around saying, I'm not ready. Everyone's fitter. I'm going to come last. I'm not even finished. I'm not going to make the cutoffs, right? So the chimp's going crazy. Then the human comes on and goes, we've got a plan. First K, we're just going to focus on the first kilometer and focus on our breathing, right? And then we have a mantra that's associated with that, which is just run my race. I'm here to run my race. Right? Can you feel that? You've gone from chimp to human, and the mantra is coming from the computer that we've programmed in our training. So let's say you're in the middle of the race and something's going on where you're going through a bit of a low patch, and you're like, I can't keep this up. I can't maintain this. Then your human comes back on because I'm prepared for this, and it says, we're just going to relax. We're just going to go to the next checkpoint, and we're just going to keep focused on this step. We're going to count our steps, right, to the next checkpoint. And all we're going to say as we're running is calm, steady, relax, right? And we're going to come back into that. And that takes that downward spiral, which the chimp could happily take us on, to take us out of the race, and it gets rid of that downward spiral. Let's just say we're running along, we've got pain in our leg, for example, and the chimp's like, something's wrong, alert, pain, we need to stop. And then the human says, let's do a body scan. Okay, there's a bit of tension. Let's just relax and adjust our form. We're going to run a little bit higher and we're just going to keep on going. And then we're going to use a mantra like, let's just settle in. Let's just settle in. We're part of this race now. That, we've got through the start. We're in this race. Let's just settle in. And then it could be like, even if you get to the point where you're like, I'm done, and the chimp's like, that's it, we're out. We can't maintain this. Don't want to be here. And off it goes on a storytelling rant. And the human can come back online and say something like, smile, breathe, remember why you're here, remember that you wanted to do this, and there's reasons that you're here and you've just forgotten them. Let's think about those reasons and remind ourselves we've done harder than this. We've trained for this and we've done harder, and it's going to be okay. All right, so that's a bit of an example. And ideally, you'd come up with your own in a workshop here, and I'd ask you to write down, what does your chimp say to you? How can you human soothe your chimp? Here's a banana chimp. It's like giving a 4-year-old an iPad. That's what they say in the Brave Athlete. Here you go, and you soothe, and then let's get a plan to go forward. All right, so I'm going to just talk a little bit about what Dr. Peters says about motivation and commitment. You probably heard this in different ways, but I think it's worth mentioning here. He emphasizes commitment over motivation, saying that motivation is a feeling, it's unreliable, it's temporary, but commitment is a decision. Can you see how those things are coming from chimp and human, right? So the feeling coming from motivation is like coming from the chimp, and the human is coming up with a decision. So when motivation dips, you go back to commitment, okay? And that's why he talks about that sentence, what's the plan? How do we be like almost robotic? I don't want to say that you're a robot. I hope you get the distinction I'm saying here. It's like, I've already worked this out. I don't need to think about it now. I've come here to run this pace, or I've come here to run with this intention and this energy. It's already pre-planned. So all I need to do is go back to my plan and stick to it, right? And if you can stay with that kind of mindset, the chimp doesn't need to come online because you've said, thank you, chimp. I know you're scared, nervous, you want me to stop. I've got the plan and we can stick with it. That's the kind of robotic things you view. All right. So I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've got something out of this episode. Remind you, your chimp is not your enemy. It's part of you. It's emotional, it's excitable, it's passionate, right? And it's protective. Sometimes overly protective. But when you learn how to listen to it, to reassure it, how to lead it, you'll unlock your best performance. And so next time your brain kind of starts to spiral, either before a session or before a race or in life, acknowledge it. And you can say, that's my chimp. And ask yourself, what's the plan? And come back to that, that calm, that reason, and that performance. And if you can just build that awareness around the 3 parts of the brain, the 2 drivers and the computer, and understand when you're in your chimp, and now you know how to get out of it. But if you just take away from this episode, knowing how your chimp tries to take you offline, that knowing the things that it says to you or makes you feel, having a strategy to acknowledge it, maybe through humor, maybe through giving it a big hug and asking, saying thank you and what do you need, and then having a plan to move forward that's aligned with your values and your goal, that you say, I came here to do this. It's important to me. I've built a plan and we're going to be okay. Okay, we've done hard things before and we're going to do this one. Thank you for listening. I hope it was practical. Above all, if you have found value out of this, please share this episode with somebody else. This podcast doesn't make any money or any of that stuff. I do it to share what I've learned and all the stuff that I continue to learn, either through my training or mainly through my reading and my study, so that you can learn, hopefully in the shortcut. Instead of reading the textbooks and doing the assignments that I'm doing, you can learn this stuff practically in a way that you can take away and apply to your running. And there's someone that you know that could benefit from it. The best way you can help me is to share the podcast with them, so that we can, get this stuff out there, because I sure wish it was around 15 years ago when I started running. But anyway, that's how you can help me. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode.